or watch later when you're available. So real quick, we'll go ahead and run through some business. Colin will not be able to join us tonight, so I'll be doing some of his stuff. Financial report, first and foremost. Savings account is currently at $2,289.11. Primary checking is at $4,933.88. And Springbrook account is at $743.10. There was a $100 payment made to Lamont Telephone Company for our annual electric bill at the repeater site. Paid $75 to USPS for next 6 months of post office box, and deposited $250 in club dues. Speaking of which, if you haven't already taken care of those, please reach out to Colin, or if you don't know if you have or not, please reach out to Colin. He'll let you know. Let's see here. We have a Missouri QSL weekend coming up in April. It was sent out in an ARRL email. If you don't have that email, I'm sure someone in the group does, so reach out. I'm sure someone can forward it to you. If nothing else, Ed can. Let's see here. And then we've got Dave Tross sent out an email. What was that, Dave? 2 weeks ago now? About 2 weeks ago about field day for this year. Just trying to get an idea of what folks would be willing or able to work on, if you're interested at all. And if something comes up, don't worry about it. This is just trying to get an idea, so please respond back to that email one way or another. Be greatly appreciated. And then upcoming in October, I know it's a bit out yet, but the Platteville Club is doing a ham fest at the community center in Platteville. And of course, all are welcome to join. And then next month, we have another testing session coming up that is listed on the ARRL website, so walk-ins are welcome. If you have any study questions, again, Ed's your guy to go to. I'll throw you under the bus, Ed, every time for this one. That's what you volunteered for, though. Yes, Gary?
Is that community center at Platteville or
yes.
Lancaster?
Lancaster. Community Center in Lancaster. Thank you. Thank you, Gary.
October 19th.
Yes, October 19th, Lancaster Community Center in Wisconsin. We hope you all can enjoy it and come along and support the brother club of ours. Let's see. I don't think I had anything else, really. Yep, okay. So, that kind of covers our basic club business, and I'll keep churning, and if someone comes up with something, we'll go ahead and cover that. Well, let's go ahead and get into our presentation for this evening. This is Dave Frost. Thank you, Joe. A little bit about him. He started his ham career in 1964, just outside of Long Island, New York. His amateur radio interests have been focused pretty broadly. Let's see here. We've got some DXing, some contesting, 50 megahertz operation, and he really enjoys the restoration and operation of classic, quote, boat anchor tube-type radios from the 40s, 50s, and 60s, as well as providing public service and nurturing the development of new amateur radio licensees through the STEM engagements. And I'm actually going to use that as a segue. If anyone has interest in that, that's something that this club has wanted to start, is some community outreach even through STEM programs. So, without further ado, Dave, welcome. Give us 1 second, slight audio issue. Give us 1 second. Joe's trying to work out some technical difficulties for us. All right, Dave, if you could try again for us, please. Okay, so we've got one-way audio. He's not. Go ahead, please, sir. We'll see if this goes. Uh-oh. Is your microphone turned down, sir?
This might be a lesson how to read lips, maybe.
one thing here? You want to try
Hey
now?
Joe, can you hear me now? I think you can hear me now, right?
Yes, I can.
Picture and no sound from Hanover.
No sound.
Now,
Yes, sir.
somebody tell me whether you've seen the slides? Yes.
Yes.
Yes? Okay, great. All right, here we go. And just go to the slideshow, and that should be good. All right. Okay, so a bit about Dave. We're going to talk a little bit about ARL. Many friends. Of course, led to my careers in science and engineering. So I worked for several electronics companies, Raycal among them, McDonnell Douglas, and then Boeing on the aircraft side, fighter jets, designing and developing radar and electronic warfare systems for our fighter jets. I retired about 3.5 years ago. This is what I looked like when I started in 1963. This is like parts, QSL. Back in Long Island, New York, where I grew up, my dad was a ham, and so he's responsible for getting me into the hobby. And I went from WN2PMP to WB2PMP to K2BP. And this is my 60th anniversary as a ham. So some of the fun things I did at work, these are two of the aircraft that I spent most of my time with McDonnell Douglas and Boeing working on. The E-18G Growler on your left. The Growler is basically a flying transmitter and receiver. And each of these pods, if you can see the cursor, that's a receive antenna pod on each wingtip with receive preamps and antennas on it. And then we have transmit pods here, here, and here. Those are actual transmitter pods. So it's a flying transmitter and receiver, the focus of which is to jam enemy ground radar, ground-based radar. And then, of course, the F-15EX, the Eagle jet fighter for the Air Force. So Navy aircraft, Air Force aircraft. Great fun. Had a great career. This is what it looks like down in the shack. Modern station, or semi-modern, Kenwood 890, a COM 1000 amplifier. Collins S-line that's been refurbished. And then an AM station. with a Johnson Ranger, and then a real vintage sideband station from the late 50s, 57, 56 time frame, a Collins 75A4 receiver, and an Eldeco exciter. And of course, the slide here, which unfortunately the caption may be hidden by the toolbar here, but it basically says, "Don't tell my wife I just bought this." Can I store it at your house? And this is what restoration of vintage equipment looks like. And of course, you take all these nasty components out, and they don't come out very easily sometimes, so it's a lot of fun. And yeah, socially unacceptable language sometimes is used. Okay, so ARRL is amateur radio. There is amateur radio because there is ARRL. We represent the amateur radio community to the Federal Communications Commission, to Congress, and to the international organizations that protect amateur radio and provide our frequency allocations. Frequency allocation at the 50,000-foot level at the top of that pyramid is the United Nations and the International Telecommunications Union. Our seat at the table is through the IARU, the International Amateur Radio Union, of which ARRL serves as the secretariat and has a representative on that committee. Of course, you know, HPM, Hiram Percy Maxim, the old man, started the ARRL in 1914 to advance the science and art of amateur radio. 5 pillars of ARRL focus on public service, advocacy, education, technology, and membership. We have 150,000 members approximately, divided into 15 divisions, so we say we are in the Midwest Division, and within that division we have 4 sections. In our case, each section happens to be a state: Iowa, Nebraska, Kansas, and Missouri. You get to the more populous areas like California, Texas, Florida, and the Northeast, and you have individual states broken up into multiple sections, giving us 71 sections in all, 2,500 affiliated clubs like yours. Okay, let's see, and we have less than 100 people up there. Right now the head count's about 80. And that is hurting us because it's very hard to provide the services to you, our members, that you've come to expect over the years, with a head count that's down by approximately 25% from where it should be. Okay, this is the ARRL board as of the January Board of Directors meeting. Rick Roderick, on the far left, remains your president. He was reelected for another term. Christian McIntyre was elected as first vice president, replacing Mike Resbeck, who retired. Mike Ritz, W7VO, was elected as second vice president, replacing Bob Valio, who retired. Both of the retirees had close to 40 years each of service to ARRL. Rod Stafford has been president of ARRL, and when he retired from that position, Rod became the VP of International Affairs, so he represents us to the IARU, along with Joel Harrison, another past president of the ARRL. And Rod Stager, WJ7S, is our treasurer. John was brought on board about a year and a half ago when Rick Nieswinder retired from that position. Rick had served as our treasurer for over 10 years, had done a fabulous job of managing our investments for us. But Rick was retiring from his professorship at the University of North Carolina in finance and accounting. He was a full professor there, PhD. And he said, when I retire, I'm also retiring from ARRL. So he provided a service to us that was just beyond compare. And then, of course, you've got our director, Art Zeigelbaum, in Lincoln, Nebraska. And Art's a retired rocket scientist, literally the proverbial rocket scientist. He spent 30 years working for JPL in California on a variety of space programs. And then when he wasn't finished with that, he decided to come teach at the University of Nebraska for 10 years. He is now a professor emeritus. And then here I am. Here's Dave. And that's another old amplifier that I used to have. That's an older picture of my station at home. And as I say, I retired from 35 years with McDonnell Douglas and Boeing, and prior to that, some years with various electronics companies. Then you have your field services organization and your section managers, and I'm sure many of you know Lee Garner, WA0UIG, who is your Iowa section manager. Cecil Higgins, AC0HH, is Missouri Section Manager. Ron Cowan, KB0DTI, is your Kansas Section Manager. And Matt Anderson, K0BOJ, is your Nebraska Section Manager. We work as director and vice director very closely with these folks, but they do not report to us. We are board members, and we have a totally different area of responsibility. The section managers report up to the ARL Field Services Organization, and I'll introduce you to Mike Walters in a bit, who is the manager at ARL. He is an employee that manages the field organization. Okay, we talked about how ARL is divided up into 15 divisions. You can see that. And so what do? Well, first of all, ARL and the board of directors works as a nonprofit corporation under Connecticut state law. And the board is responsible for policy and strategy. We are all volunteers, of course, and we put lots of hours in. It's like having a part-time job. Our the only person that actually reports to the board is David Minster, NA2AA, who is the chief executive officer. Section managers, as I said, do not report to us, but we work together. And how we work together is that Art and I hold a cabinet meeting just about once every month. Sometimes it's every 6 weeks, depending upon schedules, but we meet with the section managers usually on a monthly basis on a Zoom meeting for a couple of hours. That way we keep each other informed as to what's going on in the sections from their perspective, the field organizations, and we can feed back to them what's happening at the top of the organization and the board. But we have a fiduciary responsibility as a board member. And this is really a very important distinction. Duty of care, do no harm to the organization, make sure the organization makes effective use of all its assets, basically people, facilities, and goodwill, treat other board members and staff professionally and respectfully, and we do not direct staff. I do not pick up the phone and call the head of membership and say, hey, I think you ought to do such and such to improve the membership program. We are not their managers. They work for David Minster and other folks at headquarters. So very, very important. We have a duty of loyalty to the organization, to advance the mission of the organization, to make decisions that are in the best interest of the organization and not in the best interests of an individual or an outside entity. And we have the duty of obedience. As I said, we are incorporated in the state of Connecticut. We are a not-for-profit organization, and therefore we must go by and obey the applicable laws and regulations under the state of Connecticut in terms of business law and the organization's governing documents. And of course, we have a duty of confidentiality to ensure that deliberations can be candid and to ensure that effective strategic and tactical planning takes place. There are a number of board committees. Both Art and I sit on a variety of them. The executive committee is elected by the board, includes 5 members, and acts for the board in between meetings and other duties, between board meetings, that is, and other duties. And there are two board meetings each year, one in January and one in July. Art was elected to the executive committee in January of 2023, which is really a recognition of his contributions and the esteem that the other board members hold him in. The standing committees are the 3 committees that really make the ARL turn: Administration and Finance, the Emergency Communications and Field Services, and Programs and Services Committee. So Administration and Finance, pretty much self-explanatory. They're watching over the books. They're reviewing policy as it applies to the expenditures and the finances of the ARL to make sure that we're doing the right thing to keep the organization solvent. So the deliberations and the studies that were done in terms of do we raise dues, do we not raise dues, whether we charge a surcharge for print version of QST, print copy of QST or not, all of that was prefaced first in the Administration and Finance Committee before the results of the studies and evaluations were brought to the board. And they're done, of course, in concert with ARRL headquarters staff. Emergency Communications and Field Service is a new committee that came on board about a year and a half or 2 years ago to put a greater focus on emergency communications and the field services organization. And then Programs and Services Committee, Art was sitting on that committee up until January. He has gone on to Administration and Finance, but I am a member of that committee, as well as several others. And Programs and Services deals with everything from the awards programs to contests to DXCC, to membership to a certain extent. Very, very all-encompassing activities and lots of fun and lots of work. Another committee is, other committees are the Ethics and Elections Committee, which, for example, excuse me, Ethics and Elections would review every nomination submitted to ARRL for somebody that wants to run for office, because you have to be a member of ARRL for the past 4 years in order to run for office. And everybody that signs your nomination petition has to be an ARRL member at the time they signed it. Excuse me. And the Historical Committee, which is charged with not only maintaining the history of ARRL, but maintaining the history of amateur radio, is a committee that I actually chair. And I'm having great fun with that, related to my interest in vintage amateur radio equipment. Art is also on another board. It's called the ARRL Foundation, and that foundation delivered $608,000 in scholarships, awarded $608,000 in scholarships in 2023. What a great story there is there. It also reviews the small grants, $16,000, almost $17,000 in club grants issued in the second half of 2020, well, excuse me, the first half of 2023. And it administers the club grant program, which had $500,000 funded in 2022 and has been, excuse me, I'm at a loss for words here. It has been funded again for 2024, and we'll talk a little bit about that in just a minute, from ARDC, that's the Amateur Radio Development Corporation. And we have funded a new program, setting aside $150,000 of budget to support division conventions. So if you have 15 divisions and 15 division conventions, that means we've got about $10,000 to do a Midwest Division convention should the club sponsoring it need help. And I want to make an appeal to you that if you are interested in a club, as a club, in hosting the next ARRL Midwest Division convention, please talk to Art or myself about it, because we are looking to move that convention throughout the division from year to year. I know that it's been hosted in St. Louis by the St. Louis and Suburban Radio Club for a number of years, and they've done a great job. But we are at one extreme end of the division, and we'd like to get it located so that everybody has a chance to participate in a division convention that's a little bit closer to home over a period of years. And the foundation has assets currently right now of about $8 million. This is what headquarters building looks like in Newington. This is the offices and laboratory buildings, and that is the W1AW building. And you only see one tower in the background there. If you look carefully, you can see a second, but there are 4 or 5 towers on the property. And that ARRL headquarters building faces the W1AW building. It's a beautiful piece of property in Newington. I know this is a little tough to read probably, but this is the org chart for ARRL for staff. Here's David Minster as the CEO. Next to David, right under David, is the Chief Financial Officer, Diane Middleton. You have a Director of Operations, Bob Nauman, Director of IT, that position currently vacant. And you have a Director of Marketing and Innovation under Bob Indovitson. And then a number of other functions here, including publications, Emergency Management Director, et cetera, Education and Learning. 2 new positions here. Josh Johnston, Emergency Management Director, again, brought in about 1.5 years ago to ARRL from a position in state government in emergency management. Really brings tremendous professionalism and knowledge to that position for us. Education and Learning is headed by a professional educator, Steve Goodgame, and of course both these folks are licensed amateurs. But again, Steve is doing wonderful things. If you haven't looked at the Learning Channel or Learning Center on the ARRL website, you should take a look at it. It will provide you with a number of great videos that you can use for a club program. If, for example, you run out of things for a club program, you can just dial that up online and run a half-hour video. Here's David Minster, NA2AA. That's what David looks like. The emergency services, 9,000 volunteers. That's your section managers, your section emergency coordinators, district emergency coordinators, and so on. There's Josh Johnston, as I mentioned, has brought tremendous expertise with him to ARRL. Mike Walters, field services manager. Mike comes out of a Microsoft environment, had worked in datacom and computer science for many, many years. He is responsible for the field services organization, emergency preparedness, the W1AW activities, and convention programs. When we talk about ARRL, it's not a magazine subscription. ARRL membership is a lot more than that. And we talked about the 5 pillars, and you can also look at it from the perspective of learning, of services to you and the community, and leadership. ARRL Current, you can get all 4 magazines online. Download them, read them, and I'll tell you the digital versions are great because, for example, if you're reading QST and you're reading a product review, remember that there is sometimes in the major product reviews of a transceiver, there'll be a video embedded in the review, which of course if you're reading the hard copy of QST, you can't just press on the button that's shown in the photograph. But if you're looking at this on your tablet or your computer or your phone, you can press that button and it takes you right to the video that shows you exactly how the equipment was tested. On the Air magazine is a great magazine for the newcomer to amateur radio, but I'll tell you, there's also some great articles in there about topics such as FT8. There was one last year explaining FT8 that I thought was just a fabulously well-written article. QEX, the highly technical journal, touching the leading edge of design in communications technology, and of course the National Contest Journal. And they're all available free to members. Here's the Learning Network that I was talking about. If you go to this web page and you need a program for your radio club, you can scroll through hundreds of videos that are available on topics from how to build portable antennas to what logging software is the best logging software to use for contesting versus DXing versus whatever, and everything in between. So please take advantage of that. There's also podcasts. There's the podcast supplement to On the Air. We talked about the equipment testing. There are e-newsletters. There are email newsletters that are put out by the ARRL. If you go into your membership profile, log into the ARRL website, and then go to your membership profile, you can select which newsletters you'd like to receive. But they cover a variety of topics from propagation forecasts to DX reports to the emergency management newsletter, and it just goes on and on. A number of different topics. The ARRL weekly letter is among those. Okay, you know that we have a technical information service supported by the ARRL lab. If you have a problem, you can pick up the phone and call headquarters and ask for the lab. And you will get somebody, or somebody will call you back that can help you with a technical problem. Of course, we do FCC license modifications and renewal through our volunteer examiner program. We have the outgoing QSL service, and of course an email forwarding service. And of course, ARRL sponsors contests and events and conventions and awards. And we have select pricing on members-only items. Community, 2,500 clubs, and we support outreach to youth. ARRL is a partner in amateur radio on the space station. We have the Teachers Institute on wireless technology. I had the fun of being at headquarters building during July of last year when we were up there for our board meeting, and walking out to the parking lot around lunchtime and seeing about 8 teachers holding 2-meter HT, 2-meter 440 HTs, and cross-polarized 4-element beams pointing at the sky, all learning how to make contacts through satellites. That was phenomenal. It was just great to see them, and they are so thrilled about that. And we have, of course, the Foundation Scholarship Program and the Collegiate Amateur Radio Initiative. And something that I want to tell you about also relative to youth is that very soon it will go live, but it was approved at the January board meeting that those folks, students who are full-time students and under the age of 21 can become associate members of ARL for free. That means they will have full access to the ARL website, full access to all the ARL magazines online for free. And for example, I spoke to the amateur
For those watching online, sorry about this. Zoom timed out, so we're going to get that back up and going.
Yeah, I think I'm back. Yes. Okay. You know, this reminds me of the bird that Groucho Marx used to have to come down on the stage. If you ever watched the Groucho Marx program back in the 50s. Oh my God. So Zoom got us. So why don't we do this? I think you folks have a good idea of what ARL does. Let's open it up to questions and answers, because I know you've wanted to ask me to speak for about 30 minutes and leave about 15 minutes for Q&A. So let's go ahead and do that right now. And I'll be glad to answer any questions if you want to talk about what happened at the board meeting back in January. I can tell you, having just received an advanced copy of the April QST, the article covering the happenings at the board meeting is in the April QST that'll be arriving at your door probably in the next week or two. And also, of course, the board meeting minutes are published and available on the ARL website. So, Joe, see if there are any questions that I can answer for everybody.
Any questions tonight, folks? Coming over to you, Richard. Give me just a second.
I'm not seeing the room.
What I would like to know is whether
Video is not turning back on.
grant funding comes in.
Joe.
Uh,
Okay. I've
how do you
got
get
the
grant
view,
money?
But I've lost the view of the room.
So, Dave, can you hear us okay? Can you hear us okay, Dave? Joe.
There we go.
You able to hear us okay?
Great, I can see the room now. All right, so any questions? Anybody would like to ask a question? Joe might have to pass you the microphone.
So we did have a question from one of our members asking about where the grant funding comes from.
I'm not hearing anything, Joe.
Uh-oh.
Are you hearing me?
Yes.
You should be hearing me.
Yep. Other Joe's working out the audio real quick here.
Is there anybody that has a question?
Yep, we're just trying to get the audio back up here real quick.
Oh, okay.
There we go. Okay, sounds like we're good. So one of our members here, Richard, K0PLX had a question about grant funding and where that comes from.
Okay, the grant money, are you talking about the grant money for the clubs? Or the grant foundation, the foundation for the scholarships?
You give about $2 million worth of grants out. Where'd that money come from?
Yes, that money is coming from the Amateur Radio Development Corporation. The ARDC, if you look them up online, you can find their website. A very smart group of guys out on the West Coast that figured they could make a lot of money by gobbling up all the website domains that had not been used yet and then selling them. And the money that they garnered from selling these website domains is put towards amateur radio. And ARL is just one of many recipients of these benefactors.
Thank
So
you.
ARL applies and has applied for grants from ARDC in the same way that other individuals have and other organizations.
Thank you. Were there any other questions?
Any other questions?
So the money, a lot of it's coming from ARDC. What kind of, does ARRL, are they expected to do anything for ARDC? Are there any policies or anything that they have influence over?
I'm sorry, I'm having a really tough time understanding you because the room is bouncing back and forth. Can you get close to the mic?
As far as the money from ARDC, do they have any influence on the policy that ARRL might put out, or any influence on the organization at all?
Okay, I think you were asking, does ARDC influence ARRL as a result of the funding we receive from them? Is that your question?
Correct.
No, the answer is no, they do not influence ARRL. They can influence ARRL in the same way that, I mean, I'm guessing, I don't know for a fact, I'm guessing that ARDC, that the individuals are members of ARRL and they can influence ARRL in the same way that you can by either reaching out to your section manager, your director or vice director, or even directly to people at headquarters such as David Minster, who will answer you if you reach out to him. But no, there's no, I call it a tit for tat. There's no understanding between ARDC and ARL that if we give you $2 million, you're going to do such and such. No, that doesn't exist whatsoever.
Thank you. Dan, did you still have a question?
Yeah, Dave, great presentation. Basically, I'm asking if you're looking down in the future or up to the future, what are you seeing ahead? Are they talking about AI and how that's going to influence amateur radio in the future, things like that? When you get
that's the $64 million question. It's that discussion just barely began at this last board meeting, and if you're talking about the use of artificial intelligence in terms of contesting, that is out there being discussed and looked at by the Contest Advisory Committee, which is under Programs and Services. So from that perspective, it's very interesting. To move off topic just a little bit from specifically artificial intelligence, but in terms of computer science in general, we have also been funded in the amount of $25,000 to offer a scholarship to students to code an answer, solve a problem, and write code for it. And that will be coming out over the next year, that competition, sponsored by ARL to solve a specific problem. And of course, artificial intelligence may be part of the solution. I don't know. I don't know what the problem is yet. You know, I don't know what's going to be decided upon. But in terms of bringing youth into amateur radio and continuing to merge the RF world with the computer science world, this is one of our opportunities that we've latched onto.
appreciated. Were there any other questions this evening?
Okay, well, I want to thank you very much for inviting me to speak to your club. I'm glad that we overcame our technical difficulties. Otherwise, I was going to suggest that we fire up on 40 meters and just conduct the meeting that way. I appreciate it very much. I know I met some of you probably at the Cedar Valley Ham Fest last August, and looking forward to hopefully getting up there again this year. So I'll let you carry on with the rest of your meeting. I'm sorry that we had problems in the beginning, and hopefully I've answered some questions for you. And if you have any others, you know, my contact information is out on the ARRL website. It's also in QST on the 3rd or 4th page where they list the directors and vice directors. You can call me on my cell phone, or you can drop me an email at k2dp@arrl.org. And with that, I'll say good evening, and thank you very much for your time. It's great meeting with you.
Thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you very much. Pleasure being with you. Have a good evening.
Thank you. You as well. Alrighty. So I didn't percolate. My brain didn't percolate anything else club business related. Is there anything that I missed? Anyone? I don't see Ralph or Ed or Kelly's hand shooting up, so that's a good sign. All right. With that, then, motion to adjourn. All right. I have a few of them. Anyone opposed? Do it the easy way. Adjourn. Thank you, everybody, for coming this evening. We'll see you all again in April and the second Monday after our testing session. So hopefully we'll have some new hams then, too.